we pray, kneeling low, hear what we say. Freedom calls in every tone. Faith is built on hearts of stone. Vibes so raw, can't hide the truth. Words so sharp, they cut right through. Real talk for the soul's appeal. Prayers rise up the wounds they heal. Lift our voices to the sky. A righteous perspective high. On this path we won't back down. For the Father wears the crown. Each step brings another fight. Breaking chains, we're seeking light. Voice of power won't be tamed. With His love, we're never ashamed. Lift our voices to the sky. A righteous perspective high. On this path we won't back down. For the Father wears the crown. From the ashes we shall rise. Hope is found deep in our eyes. Every word a battle cry. With the Father none deny.
Hey, welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. It's your man Wise. Welcome to A Righteous Perspective. We got a heck of a show for you guys today. We got a lot to get into. Got some guests that will be joining the show a little later on today. So we got that going on. I want to give a shout out to all the mods in the building today. Shout out to UB. Appreciate you pulling up today, sister, as always. Shout out to UZFRK9. Appreciate you pulling up. Shout out to TA Kasky. What's going on with your brother? Hey, it was freezing out here today. We were down in the teens, 17, 18 degrees out here, man. It was ridiculous. It's just too daggone cold, man. The spring, summertime can't get here quick enough. What's going on with you, Ed? How you doing today, brother? Appreciate you pulling up as always. Mississippi in the building. Appreciate you guys pulling up. As you guys know, my camera's facing this way, but the screen is this way, so I like to be able to see what's going on in the chat. That's why if you ever catch me and I'm looking this way, that's what's happening. I am focused on you guys, man, and we got a lot to talk about today, man. You know, as you guys seen in the thumbnail, we're going to talk some Karen Bass. We're going to dive into her history a little bit. We got to talk about Brandon Johnson and what's going on out there in Chicago. And, you know, I got a couple guests. Like I said earlier, I got a couple guests joining the show tonight. So this should be fun, man. We're going to have some good conversations today. Let me know in the chat where you guys are tuning from. I know where you guys are at, mods. Kenny Cooper, Kenny G in the building, out in California. All right, man, be safe out there. Be safe out there on the road, man. I do appreciate you pulling up. I'm looking forward to getting my t-shirt. As soon as I get it, I'll have it on one of the live streams, hopefully next week, Lord willing. You know, shout out to NPO Creations. I got her t-shirt and I haven't rocked it this week, but I will make sure that I get that and show her some love as well. We got a lot going on, man. So let me know where you guys are tuning in from, city, state, or country, more or less. I think yesterday, maybe we had somebody from I know for sure Australia was in the building. I believe somebody from the Philippines was in the building yesterday. So that was phenomenal. Man, we getting international love out here, man. ARP in the building. We actually had a couple new people join the ARP family. Terry M, appreciate you pulling up today. All right, we got North Carolina. We got Wofford, Texas in the building. I love it, man. I love it, man. I appreciate you guys pulling up, man, and appreciate those that support the channel by joining the ARP family. The best way to support the channel, obviously, is hitting the like button. You can share the stream with folks. The share button below. Don't click in the URL up at the top. Click the share button and copy that one right there. You can share the stream, Facebook, Reddit. That's some of the best ways that you could help the channel out. And that's all the videos for that matter. I probably should mention that on the videos that, hey, how about y'all share it? Use that share button down there. For whatever reason, YouTube looks at it a little differently in comparison to when you copy the URL in comparison to copying the link that they provide to share the stream. So that's a great way to share the stream there. Obviously hitting the like button. If you guys would like to support the channel financially, super chats, super thanks are very, very much appreciated. If you'd like to join the ARP family, I appreciate you guys there. The other way is you could buy your man a coffee. Link is in the description box below. And yeah, man. So a lot of little housekeeping going on. Shout out to who we got in here. Robert, South Carolina, or Lexington, South Carolina. We got San Antonio in the building, Indian Land, South Carolina in the building, Long Beach, California in the house. All right. San Diego in the building. Okay, that's what's up. But he's in Tijuana. Okay. That's what's up, man. I'm guessing it's warm over there, man. Sheesh. Y'all got a lot better than we do. Who we got? JB Rance in the building out of Boston. All right, more North Carolina. We got a lot of Carolina folks in here, North and South Carolina. That's awesome, man. That is awesome. Selma, Alabama in the building today. Ah, man. We got folks all over the place. All right, Gord Peterson, Canada. We got a Canadian in the building. 51st state. I guess you'd have to break Canada up into probably about 4 or 5 different states because it's so big. But that would be pretty dope. We got Key West in the building, Wake Forest, North Kakalaki in the building, Sacramento. That's what's up, man. That's what's up, man. We got a great show today. Got a lot to cover. So let's get things popping, man. Let's get it going.
Would you have taken that trip overseas?
I am going to focus today
but please,
on what we know.
Can I ask you one question about brown gouging?
So today we are going to dive into the latest disasters hitting the Democrat Party. And honestly, it's like watching a slow motion train wreck. I mean, their policies have been ticking time bombs for years. And that's being polite, to be honest with you. And now we're seeing the fallout unfold right before our eyes. And this time, the spotlight's on LA Mayor Karen Bass. And goodness gracious, that lady is in the hot seat, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. Picture this. We got wildfires raging all across Los Angeles, causing chaos, destruction, displacing thousands and thousands of people. And where was Karen Bass? Not on the front lines, not with her constituents, but overseas in Ghana, attending a fancy reception, and as she put it, connecting with the ancestors. Yes, she said connecting with the ancestors. All the while, her city is literally burning. She's sipping cocktails halfway across the globe. You can't make this stuff up, man. You can't make this stuff up, man. But let's be clear. This isn't just bad optics. It's a colossal failure of leadership. The National Weather Service issued warnings days before the fires even broke out. And LA firefighters, they've been sounding the alarm about this situation, and been sounding the alarm about them being understaffed and also about these budget cuts for months. They warned her. They warned them. They warned that if we don't get the resources that we need, lives will be lost. And guess what happened? Those warnings, they came true. And let's just break down how badly this was mishandled, mismanaged. The incompetence is on 1,000 with these folks.
Cut one position If we close one station, if we close one resource, the residents of Los Angeles are going to pay the ultimate sacrifice, and someone will die.
Just last month, fire personnel packed an LA Fire Commission meeting, begging the city to rethink the budget.
These cuts came at exactly the wrong time, with calls for services at an all-time high and our firefighters at their breaking point.
We are straining our department's resources beyond the brink, and we cannot continue on this path.
City Councilwoman Tracy Park was there too.
All right, so let's talk about Karen Bass and her brilliant budgeting decisions. This lady, in all of her infinite wisdom, she decided to cut the LA Fire Department's budget by $17 million this past fiscal year, the second largest cut in the city's entire budget. And get this, she originally wanted to slash it by $23 million, but settled on $17 million. Now let's break this down real fast. Last year, the city allocated $837 million to the fire department. It sounds like a whole lot of money, but here's the kicker. They spent $1.3 billion on the homeless crisis, and nearly half of that funding, it went unused. Talk about your priorities being all the way jacked up. And speaking of priorities, the city council shifted funds from the fire department to increase the funding for the police department. Now, don't get me wrong. Do not get me wrong. Law enforcement is crucial, especially in a city that has crime rates like LA. But let's not forget, those same crime rates are a direct result of the soft on crime policies Democrats love to champion. It's a vicious cycle. It's a vicious cycle. They defund critical services, crime skyrockets, and then they scramble to patch up the mess that they created in the first daggone place. Meanwhile, the fire department is understaffed, underfunded, and stretched to its breaking point. And yet people are still trying to defend Bass, claiming that the fires were unprecedented and no one could have prepared for this. And sure, I mean, yes, the winds were extreme. They were. But she was also told, they were warned about that as well. But this is Southern California. This is a place where wildfires are basically an annual event. Planning ahead isn't optional, man. It's essential. It is essential. So I want to know, why wasn't this a priority? That's what I want to know. Why did they not prioritize this situation? It just makes you wonder, man. It really does. But let's keep going.
See somebody that responds to your house, your emergency, whether it's a medical call or a fire call, that looks like you. It gives that person a little bit more ease, knowing that somebody might understand their situation better. Is she strong enough to do this? Or, you couldn't carry my husband out of a fire, which my response is, he got himself in the wrong place if I have to carry him out of a fire.
This is absolute insanity. The fact that that lady said that with a straight face and didn't think that no one would have an issue with her saying that is just mind-boggling. Seriously. You want someone to respond to your emergency who looks like you. Are you freaking kidding me? Are you freaking kidding me? Chief, there's a man trapped in a burning building. You know, can you send a squad ASAP? Not my job. He got himself in there, he get himself out. This is crazy. This is the kind of nonsense that Karen Bass has been pushing. And instead of prioritizing getting the most qualified firefighters into critical roles, she's focused more on making the LA Fire Department look like a rainbow coalition to meet diversity quotas. And now people are paying the price for these misguided priorities. And Bass has been funneling taxpayer dollars into projects like queer occult interests, whatever the heck that is. In the chat, has any of you guys ever heard of that before? Anybody out in California, are y'all familiar with queer occult interests? Now, the last time I heard anything about occult, you know, typically I think, witches and brujas and things of that nature. That's what I think. I've never heard of queer occult interests. What is that? Is that witchcraft? Is that what that is? In the chat, somebody answer that. Is that witchcraft? When you start talking about the occult, I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Something else that she funneled some money into was the Ebony Theater and a trans cafe. A trans cafe. But not into wildfire prevention infrastructure improvements or ensuring that the best qualified people are put in key positions. That's where your money's going. That's where the money was going. Queer occult interests, trans cafe, Ebony Theaters. You can't make this stuff up, man. Okay. Appreciate that, B. I'm gonna have to do some additional research on the occult. Every time I think about the occult, I always think about, either something satanic, demonic, or, some form of witchcraft or something along those lines. But I mean, the priorities are off, man. They were putting more money in things like that and not, the money into, protecting your homes or families, but to fund vanity projects that check ideological boxes. And why is that? Well, this is going to get interesting. And here's where it gets interesting. There's a deeper, darker side to Karen Bass that we have to talk about. This isn't just a leadership failure. This isn't just a leadership failure. It's a part of a bigger picture. We're talking communist connections, Fidel Castro, ties to M19, and maybe even a link to the U.S. Senate bombing in November 1983. When you start connecting the dots, this entire tragedy begins to make even more sense. Let's get into it a little deeper.
But let's understand who she is and why she doesn't have a lot to say. Karen Bass built her career as a community activist. Oh, there's a code word we now understand what it means. The activism is a polite term now for her history. She's an activist. Well, okay. Her history is tied to radicalism, Marxism, and a dangerous ideology that bled from the fringes into the mainstream here recently. So let's start with the facts on her. Back in the 1970s, Karen Bass was not just a casual traveler to Cuba. Were there any? When she went to Cuba many, many times, she was a devoted participant in what's called the Venceramos Brigade. What is that? I never heard of it. Well, it's a Marxist training program directly tied to Fidel Castro's regime. Between 1969 and today, this group has sent hundreds of young Americans to Cuba, not for a vacation, not for cultural exchange, but for radicalization. You don't join the Venceramos Brigade because you want to learn, what is that? What is the emoji with the salsa dancer? Can I use that if I join the Venceramos? That's not what that's about. It's not about good Cuban coffee. You join because you're a confirmed Marxist-Leninist.
Let's break this down real fast. Let's unpack this. Glenn Beck said a mouthful right there. Glenn Beck just dropped some heavy facts about Karen Bass's past. And it's a lot to take in, man. She wasn't just some tourist in Cuba snapping pictures and enjoying scenery. No, she was deeply involved with the Venceramos Brigade, a group notorious for radicalizing young Americans into communist ideology. This wasn't some innocent cultural exchange. The Venceramos Brigade was tied directly to Fidel Castro's regime and served as a tool to promote Cuban communism in the United States of America. They didn't just teach participants about Cuba, they indoctrinated them into a worldview hostile to American values. And Bass wasn't just a passive participant. She was actively engaged, aligning herself with these ideas. The fact that someone with this kind of history is now in a leadership role, overseeing one of America's largest cities, is absolutely mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. It puts her policy decisions and priorities into a much clearer and, frankly, a more concerning context. This isn't just about bad leadership. It's about a worldview that prioritizes ideology over practicality, loyalty to a cause over service to the people. Let's dive deeper into what this means for LA and the implications for the country as a whole. This is crazy, man. So Karen Bass allegedly visited Cuba at least 15 times in the 70s. At least 15 times in the 70s, rubbing elbows with future members of M19 and the Weather Underground, groups notorious for their terrorist activities. Now let that sink in for a second. Let that sink in for a second. Your mayor, LA mayor, if you live out in LA, if you live out that way, your mayor learning the ropes of bomb making and terror tactics, all while masquerading as a community activist. But this isn't just ancient history. It connects directly to her current actions. While LA was engulfed in flames, where was Mayor Bass? She was in Ghana attending the inauguration of John Dramani Mahama, who is known as a Marxist and Leninist. You can't make this stuff up, man. This dude, who was just elected in Ghana, is known as a Marxist and a Leninist. And here's where it gets even more chilling. The Venceramos Brigade, of which Bass was a part of, wasn't just some harmless cultural exchange. This group had ties to domestic terrorism, including the 1983 U.S. Capitol bombing carried out by M19, a group radicalized through, you guessed it, the Venceramos Brigade. Bass wasn't just a passive participant in this. She was deeply involved. Now, let's not forget her remarks about Fidel Castro, a man responsible for countless deaths and unimaginable suffering. When he died, Bass called it, and I quote, a great loss. She said it was a great loss. That right there says everything that you need to know about this person, man.
Anyway, let's go back to the radical history for a minute, because it didn't end with the Venceramos Brigade. M19, the same group that bombed the Capitol in 1983, had direct ties to Cuba and the brigade. Remember, she's a leader in this. Now, Susan Rosenberg, she was one of the women that traveled to Cuba and returned as a domestic terrorist, shared the same ideological roots as Karen Bass. Now, I'm not saying Karen Bass planted the bomb or anything, but let's be clear. She was part of exactly the same radical network. She called Fidel Castro charismatic. She praised the dictator who was brutalizing his people. She aligned herself with a movement that believed in revolutionary violence, including the bombing of the Capitol. Now, she hasn't reformed. She hasn't come out and said, oh my gosh, have I learned my lesson? That was all really bad. I was a stupid kid. No, she's held on to those things. And in fact, she was considered a front runner for vice president under Joe Biden. Her record was so toxic, so troubling, that even the Democratic Party said, well, I don't, can we do that? When your Marxist roots are too bad, too heavy for the Democrats, the progressives in Washington, D.C. today, that says something.
It definitely says something. And shout out to Gail Thulser for the $1.99 super sticker. Appreciate you supporting the channel. And yes, it says a whole lot. And honestly, it makes everything, unfortunately, it makes a whole lot more sense with this lady. It does. Let's talk about M19. M19 was the first and only woman-created, woman-led terrorist organization in the United States. Many of these women came from privileged backgrounds, but went from peaceful protests to robbing armored trucks, aiding prison breaks, and eventually building bombs themselves. These feminist radicals in the 70s and 80s weren't just fighting for women's rights. They were deeply embedded in a broader revolutionary movement. They saw themselves as part of a global struggle against imperialism and capitalism, believing true liberation for minorities, women, everyone would only come through political revolution. Does that sound familiar to you? Does that sound familiar to you? And you have to wonder, man, when people like Bass push this DEI, gender, and race quota and turn cities into sanctuary cities, are these radical ideologies really a thing of the past? Or are they still influencing decision-making today? You have to ask yourself. For years, Democrats, they've prioritized ideology over practicality, pushing socialist ideas that simply don't work. How many times have you heard that socialism works? It's just never been implemented properly. How many times have you heard that? I mean, just look at California. High taxes, skyrocketing homelessness, worsening water shortages, and now devastating wildfires that were entirely mismanaged. The incompetence is on 1,000 with this one. But then again, it makes me think, is it really incompetence? I mean, these fires, they didn't have to happen this way. They didn't. This isn't just about one bad policy. It's a pattern of misplaced priorities that has caused real, tangible damage and suffering. People are sounding the alarm and they're fed up. Even liberals like Bill Maher are starting to say, hold up, man, this ain't right. When people like Bill Maher start to speak against the Democratic Party, although it is something that he's been doing over the year, hey, I do not think that he's on our side. I don't, but it is about time that these folks start calling out their own. It's about time. Shout out to Dragonfly for the $1.99 super sticker. Appreciate you supporting the channel. Appreciate the support, man.
Is taking a lot of heat. So is Gavin Newsom. But there's going to be a recall on Karen Bass. We will see what happens. But a lot of people think she failed in terms of leadership and, you know, where budget cuts may have affected the fire department. And there are other people who are saying, how dare you even talk about that in the middle of the fire? So where do you stand?
Well, we all took a lot of heat. I'm with the people who want to hold politicians accountable. You know, we shouldn't talk about it now. It's so funny to hear that coming out of the mouths of liberals, because they hate it when conservatives say that after a gun tragedy, which is what conservatives always say after a mass shooting. This is not the time to politicize it, and then it never is. It is absolutely the time to talk about it. This is what my editorial is about Friday night on the show. Was it always going to be bad? Of course. Their arguments are not wrong. We built the city in a terrible place to build a city. Global warming absolutely does make hot stuff and weather worse. Winds were ridiculous. Yeah, I get all that. And they also made a lot of errors. And if you held Bush accountable for Katrina and thought Rudy Giuliani was an idiot for putting the command center in the World Trade Center, which is the place they attacked for and were most likely to attack again, which he was, well, then you have to have some intellectual honesty and criticize your team when they don't do it right. And they've had a long time to get this righter. It was always going to be bad. All of these were always going to be bad, and they always seem to be the worst they ever possibly could be. So, no, I think we should demand better.
Even Bill Maher, a diehard liberal Democrat, is calling out the Democrat hypocrisy. They're the first to politicize tragedies when it suits them, pushing gun control after mass shootings. Y'all know it. It happens every time. Every time one of these tragedies happen, what's the first thing out of their mouths? They want to take the guns away. We got to figure out a way to get guns out of people's hands. This is, talking about, this is exactly the time to talk about it. But when it comes to their own failures, when it comes to them, it's rules for thee, not for me. Suddenly, we got to wait for accountability. We got to wait. And honestly, Bill Maher's absolutely right. If you held Bush accountable for Katrina and the failures there in New Orleans, you have to hold. You better hold Karen Bass accountable for this debacle. And let's not ignore Bill Maher's mention of climate change, another classic liberal co-op or cop-out. Let's not. Wildfires in California, they're not a new phenomenon. They're not. They're predictable. Firefighters warned these folks for months that their department was understaffed, underfunded, and plainly, saying that someone will die if this isn't fixed. And Bass and the city council members, they ignored them. And now people are dead, homes are destroyed, and chaos reigns. And the irony is this. Maher's argument mirrors what conservatives have been saying for years. Woke politics don't work. They don't. This disaster has even sparked a recall movement against Bass. But this shouldn't even be a recall. She should just resign. But it has sparked a movement to recall. And it's not just conservatives leading the charge. It's people from all sides. They want that lady gone. And here's the bigger picture. Elections have consequences. I've been saying this for a bit. Elections have consequences. And when you vote for woke progressives who prioritize ideology over practicality, this is exactly what you get. Cities unprepared for disasters, mismanaged resources, and leaders who are more focused on optics than results. And when everything collapses, they blame climate change, capitalism, or anything else but their own failed policies. Now, speaking of policies and leadership facing backlash, let's shift our attention to Chicago, where another Democrat mayor, Brandon Johnson, is under fire. Walgreens has announced the closure of 5 stores in predominantly Black and brown neighborhoods, and people are furious. And it doesn't stop there. There's also a growing recall effort against Brandon Johnson, much like what's happening out in LA with Karen Bass. But first, we got to have a word from our sponsor, Lear Capital. And before I do that, I want to make sure that I show some love to Angela. Appreciate you, AAA, for supporting the channel with a $1.99 super sticker. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. Let me be brutally honest with you all. Our American values and financial system are under attack right now. You need to act fast and learn alternative ways to invest. That's why I trust Lear Capital for buying gold and silver. In today's volatile economic and political climate, precious metals can protect your wealth. Lear Capital has over 27 years of experience, thousands of 5-star reviews, and more than 3 billion in trusted transactions. Here's what I recommend. Call Lear Capital today, 800-489-6450, or visit learrp.com to request their free gold and silver investor kit. You can take possession of your metals, store them, or even roll over an IRA or a 401k into a gold IRA with the same tax benefits. Plus, they're offering up to $15,000 in bonus gold for qualified purchases. Call today at 800-489-6450 or go to learrp.com for more information.
There is a new move to recall Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. The first attempt, you may remember, came from a Chicago resident, an average citizen. But this next one comes from Springfield. NBC5's Chela Vachahusky got the mayor's reaction to this today.
as he joined a cavalcade of public officials welcoming a $1.9 billion federal investment in the CTA's Red Line extension. Mayor Brandon Johnson brushed off what have been increasing calls for him to be recalled.
As far as, people introducing legislation, that's their job to do that.
Late Thursday night, Representatives Anthony DeLuca and LaShawn Ford introduced HB 1084, calling for a clear and effective process to conduct recall elections in cities like Chicago.
People are asking for it. It's not something that I thought of myself. It's something that constituents asked for in 2015 after the Laquan McDonald's tape was released.
At the time, Ford's bill, which he has introduced every year since, was aimed at Mayor Rahm Emanuel. There is already a grassroots effort underway to collect the more than 56,000 signatures necessary to force a recall. The man behind that movement is Dan Boland.
Every day that the mayor is in office is a master class in why a Chicago mayoral recall mechanism is needed.
The mayor's office is still reeling after questions were raised about his status as an on-leave member of the Chicago Teachers Union and his involvement in contract talks, as well as criticism from the governor's office about his relationship with Springfield.
The good thing about the work that we do in the city of Chicago, a perception of one individual doesn't define the entire city of Chicago. I will say this, though, the city of Chicago has gotten better, stronger, and safer.
In Pullman, Charlie Wojciechowski, NBC 5 News.
Thanks to Charlie.
What world are we living in? What world are these people living in? Seriously. Seriously. Better, stronger, safer out in Chicago? Really? Really? Let's get into it, man. In Illinois, Democrats are pushing a bill to make it easier to recall mayors like Brandon Johnson, who's likely sitting on one of the lowest approval ratings in Chicago's history, a city no stranger to questionable leadership. But what's surprising is that it's not just frustrated residents. Its state lawmakers are stepping in as well, saying that constituents want a streamlined recall process. Grassroots efforts are already underway, with residents working to collect the 56,000 signatures needed for a recall election. People are fed up. They're fed up, man. They're fed up with the high taxes, the rising crime, the deteriorating neighborhoods. It's crazy, man. And businesses like Walgreens are shutting down stores, especially in high crime, low income areas. And honestly, you can't blame them. You can't blame them. Last time I checked, people go into business to make money. The last time I checked. Even nonprofits, they're in the business to make money. Now, granted fact, the money doesn't necessarily go where it's supposed to go, but they are in the business to make money. The residents in these areas, they're the ones that are paying the price for failed leadership, and they've simply had enough. They've had enough, man. And to be honest with you, I don't blame them. Let me get this in here real quick.
Now that more Walgreens locations will be closing down.
It's a bad issue. It's bad. We need Walgreens. We need it because our medicine, we're seniors.
The second largest pharmacy store chain in the U.S. announced it's closing 5 stores by the end of February in neighborhoods on the city's south and west sides.
Walgreens they're still trying to make their money, but they don't want to do it in the black and brown community.
In an emailed statement, a spokesperson for Walgreens says the most recent closures are a part of a previously announced business strategy calling for the shuttering of 1,200 locations over 3 years, adding in part, increased regulatory and reimbursement pressures are weighing on our ability to cover the costs associated with rent, staffing, and supply needs. It's never an easy decision to close a store.
Is disappearing.
While at an unrelated event advocating for affordable housing for seniors, community activist Reverend Robin Hood says the closures will be a devastating blow for those already struggling to get their medications.
And Walgreens is wrong for coming in this community all these years and then closing it up.
After seeing several drugstores close in recent years, Del Car drugstore owner Edwin Muldrow, whose father opened in 1960 what is now the only black-owned drugstore left in Chicago, says when corporate pharmacy chains abandon communities, they leave behind pharmacy deserts.
So when you take the prescription services out of the community,
where are the seniors going to go and purchase food, purchase basic healthcare items?
No suburban locations are included in this planned closure. Walgreens.
Sad, man. It's sad. It's so unfortunate because this shouldn't be happening. But the policies.
The 1901 project named for the address of the United Center was.
All right. Let me stop that. All right. Sorry about that. Let's keep it real here, though. Let's keep it a buck. Walgreens, they're not leaving Chicago for the fun of it. Y'all know this. Y'all know this. They're leaving because it's impossible to operate in a city where crime is out of control. I mean, these neighborhoods are falling apart. The neighborhoods are falling apart. Not because of Walgreens, but because of Brandon Johnson's failed leadership. Crime is rampant. It is out of control. People don't feel safe. And businesses can't survive when shoplifting is through the roof. There was a story that came out maybe 6 months ago, sometime, mid or early 2024. There was a story that came out. There was a young brother who opened a shoe store. I don't know if you guys recall, but he had to close his business down. Basically took his life savings to open up a brick and mortar shoe store, selling, exotic sneakers and things of that nature. He was a sneakerhead. And the store had been broken into like 2-3 times to the point that he couldn't stay in business. And if I'm not mistaken, I can't remember if the store was on the west side or on the south side of Chicago, but it was in Chicago, and he couldn't stay in business because they were robbing him blind. This situation, man, it's not about race. It's not. There are people, they may want to make it about it, but it's not about race, man. It just isn't. Despite what the left will have you believe, it's not about race, man. It's about crime, period. And when theft is normalized and law enforcement is demonized, this is the inevitable result. Walgreens, they're not closing suburban stores. They're shutting down high crime, low income areas where it's impossible to stay afloat, where it's impossible to make a profit. Again, the last time I checked, businesses are in business to make a profit. And it's so unfortunate that they're closing because you have to ask, who suffers the most? Who suffers the most from this? It's the residents who are now left without basic services. And let's not forget who pushed these disastrous policies. Democrats champion defunding the police. They champion soft on crime laws and treating criminals like victims. These policies have turned cities like Chicago, San Francisco, Oakland, New York, LA into crime-ridden wastelands. I'm sure the list goes on. I'm sure there's more cities that are suffering from these piss-poor policies. And while Democrats claim to care about Black folks, why they claim to care about the Latino communities, those are the very neighborhoods suffering the most from their failures. TA, you're right. We'll add Boston to that list as well. The truth is this, man. Brandon Johnson isn't just a bad mayor. He's a symptom of a broken system. And now he's caught yet another controversy, this time involving his ties to the Chicago Teachers Union. It's corruption on every level. And the people of Chicago, they're the ones paying the price, unfortunately.
There is a new move to recall Chicago Mayor.
Wrong one.
Controversy over Mayor Brandon Johnson's status with the Chicago Teachers Union has taken a new turn. Ethical questions persist about the mayor's role in ongoing CTU contract talks. And now the city's Board of Ethics is weighing in, denying that their office ever advised the mayor on the issue. Political reporter Marianne Ahern is here now with more. Marianne?
Alex, the mayor says he's a member on leave from CTU, which means potentially he may benefit from the very contract the city is now negotiating.
This was my first question to Mayor Johnson earlier this week.
Let's start with a yes or no question. Is it proper to negotiate a CTU contract if, as a member on leave, you are going to benefit from that contract?
Well, I'm not going to benefit from the contract.
Officially, he has not resigned from CTU.
So I am on leave from Chicago Public Schools, but I'm not negotiating a contract. The Board of Education has that responsibility.
But with elected school board members joining next week, the mayor still appoints the majority of the school board. While the mayor's team suggested they were.
All right, let's break this down real fast. Goodness gracious, man. Let's break this down real fast. Brandon Johnson is still on leave from the daggone Chicago Teachers Union. He hasn't resigned. So this means that he's still technically connected to the union while negotiating a contract with them. Now think about that. As a mayor, he's setting terms for a union that he's still tied to. And when his time as mayor is up, he can just slide back into his old role and benefit from the very terms that he's negotiating right now. If this right here, if this is not a blatant conflict of interest, I really don't know what is. I really don't. And here's the kicker. It gets even worse, man. It gets even worse. Let me add this back up here real quick.
So I am on leave from Chicago Public Schools, but I'm not negotiating a contract. The Board of Education has that responsibility.
But with elected school board members joining next week, the mayor still appoints the majority of the school board. While the mayor's team suggested they were advised there were no ethical concerns, Steve Berlin, the executive director of the City Board of Ethics, denies he was ever asked for advice on the mayor's union status. Berlin tells NBC5, quote, "The Board of Ethics was not asked about on-leave arrangements with the CTU or CPS under the city's governmental ethics ordinance and has issued no opinions addressing this issue."
You can't make this type of stuff up, man. All these people do is blatantly lie to our faces, man. Johnson's been claiming that the city's ethics board cleared him, but here's the truth. They weren't even consulted on the matter. And Johnson's defense is that he's not directly negotiating the CTU contract. I mean, come on, man. Come on. He appoints the Board of Education. That's his job. He gets to pick who's going to be on the board. You think he's hands off with these people? When the board refused to approve a high interest rate loan to fund a 9% raise for CTU members, Johnson didn't back down. And instead, he pressured every board member to resign and replace them with people who'd play ball. That's what happened. That's what he did. Meanwhile, Chicago's got bigger problems. Crime is rampant. The cost of living is skyrocketing. And Chicago's public schools are failing. All the while taxpayers are already drowning under that burden. And what is Johnson doing? He's handing out deals to the CTU and floating the idea of raising property taxes because that's what Democrats always do. And when people call him out on it, as they should, Johnson's go-to move is to play the race card. And instead of addressing the real issue, it's all about the same. It's all about these, all part of the same broken playbook. I mean, it's really freaking ridiculous. It really is.
White supremacy is real, y'all.
Say that. Say that.
I'm gonna say that one more time.
Say that.
Because in case the city of Chicago don't know, you got a black mayor with a black wife, black children on the west side of Chicago. And all of these other administrations that shut down our schools, that shut down public housing, that raided the pensions, that sold off the parking meter, that sold off the Skyway. Those people ran this city to the ground, and now they expect a brother to fix it in a year. Well, guess what? We're off to a great start, and I look forward to fixing their mess, building up our communities for the next 23 freaking years. God bless you, Chicago. Southside.
Last time I checked, Chicago's been under Democratic leadership, dating back to the, 60s at least, maybe a little earlier than that, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it's the 50s. So who is he blaming? Goodness gracious. You see how it's always someone else's mess, though, right? It's never Karen Bass's mess. You know, it's climate change's fault. It's never Brandon Johnson's mess. It's racism or capitalism or something else entirely. Anything to avoid taking responsibility for their own incompetence. And with Johnson, it's the same story in Chicago. Where is the money going? What are you doing with it? Why isn't it being used to clean up the streets, fund more officers, improve the schools, or build community centers? Who's deciding how this money is spent and why it keeps, funding trips instead of fixing actual problems in the cities? These are fair questions, man. But when they get asked, well, just take a look at how these people respond. It tells you everything that you need to know. Goodness gracious, man. It's just so frustrating. They went from Lori Lightfoot, who was bad, to Brandon Johnson, who is far worse.
I am doing terrific.
Well, good afternoon. Mayor, is this a good week to go to London for a Bears game? And also, who's going to pay for that trip?
All right. Okay. All right. I'm going to London to attract business to Chicago. Okay? I'm going to London to attract business in Chicago.
Or are you going to the game?
Hold on a second. Because you already know the answer to that. But I just want to make sure that you do the people of Chicago service. Because I have to be very honest with you. It's pretty jacked up the way you frame that.
Right.
That is. It is. It's disrespectful and condescending that the black man is going to London for a game. It's disrespectful. It is. And people get away with that too much.
They do.
The governor went to Tokyo. The governor went to Tokyo to attract business. The mayor of Chicago is going to London to attract business, and while I'm there, I'm going to root for the Chicago Bears.
Can you confirm if you're not, or are you on leave from CTU?
Okay. All right. I'm the mayor of Chicago, you all. I'm the mayor of Chicago.
He's the mayor of Chicago. He's the mayor of Chicago. You know what, man? I truly feel for the people of Chicago, man, and the people of LA. I mean, the residents dealing, with the fallout of leaders like Brandon Johnson and Karen Bass. But here's the hard truth, man. Here's the hard truth, and I hate to say it, but if this is what you vote for, this is what you're going to get. Leaders who prioritize political games over public service, who lie to your face, and who blame everyone else for their state or for the state of their city. These are the same people who've built and sustained a system rigged against the communities that they claim to champion. This isn't just about individual failures. It's about a party that's become synonymous with corruption. A party where the ends justify the means, even if that means misleading the public or manipulating systems for their personal gain and perpetuating a cycle of dependency that hurts the very communities that they're supposed to help. What we're witnessing right now is the dismantling of what made our cities great, all in the name of progressivism. That's anything but progressive. And it's time to expose these leaders for what they are and demand better, because the cost of this political theater is clear. It's our streets, our schools, our safety, and ultimately our lives. These are the things that are on the line. Elections have consequences. Now, they're trying to recall Karen Bass out there. Are they going to put another Democrat in there with the same woke, far left, progressive, ideas? Same thing out in Chicago. They went from Lori Lightfoot, who was bad. She was not good out there. And Just when you thought it couldn't get worse than Lori Lightfoot, here comes Brandon Johnson. You can't make this stuff up, man. You can't make this stuff up. And out there in Chicago, even if they do get a chance to recall Brandon Johnson, will they put another Democrat in that space? It's the definition of it's insanity. Doing the same things over and over and over again, hoping or expecting for a different result. When Brandon Johnson ran, there were no Republican on the ticket. There were no independents on the ticket. Every last person was a Democrat. All you had to do was win the Democratic primary and you were slotted as mayor. That's it. Same thing out in Baltimore. Same thing out in Baltimore. If you can win the field in the Democratic primary, that's it. The general election is unopposed. It happened in Baltimore, happened in Chicago. Now, I'm not for certain what the field looked like in LA. Now, I do know the governor field was a little different. Gavin Newsom had some competition. Larry Elder was on his head. He received 49% of the vote, and I truly believe that had he got into the race early and not at the last minute, he may have won. But he got into the race with 8 weeks left and still was able to garner about 49% of the recall vote, which is huge. That's huge. But it just makes you wonder. I know, out in Chicago, you got, Chicago Flips Red. You got that group out there. I haven't heard much, about what's going on out in LA as far as, whether it's a, Green Party movement, a Libertarian Party movement, a Republican Party movement. I haven't heard much about the opposition out there to the Democratic Party. I haven't heard much about that. But you really have to ask yourself that even if they are able to get both Karen Bass and Brandon Johnson out, will they replace them with another Democrat who is going to push the same radical agenda, whose coffers are being filled by the same people? You have to ask yourself that. You really do. I mean, that's sad, man. And honestly, man, I feel sorry for the people out in both cities, man. And honestly, in, Democratic-led cities across the country, because everywhere they rule is death and destruction. Everywhere. Death and destruction. Even out here in Maryland, we went from a surplus. We're now, we now got a budget that they're looking at. We're going to be in a $3 billion deficit out here. And Governor Wes Moore has his eyes on the White House in 2028. It's not looking good, man. It's not looking good at all. We're going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. I got some guests coming on, but I want to take a quick break. And, then we'll get back. I got a couple guests that will join the show tonight. But I do appreciate you guys rocking with me and hanging in there with me today. Actually, today's show is going to go a little longer than normal. I know we've been right there at that hour to hour 15 mark. We'll probably go a little longer tonight, which is I think pretty good. And maybe hopefully this goes well and we'll do more of this, in the near future. But we'll be right back. Give me we'll say we'll be right back in about a minute.
Look outside the window, see the world on fire. People screaming freedom, but they're preaching to the choir. My heart feels heavy, but my soul stays high. Living for the truth, not the gains of a liar. In this game of life, everyone's a player. But how many truly live without a slayer? Trying to find the light while victory close. Yet the wisest ones know how the story goes. Filtered truths and lies wrapped in golden bows. We rise above the noise where the freedom flows. Entertainment fills the screens, but what's real?
All right. Appreciate y'all hanging in there with me, rocking with me tonight. All right. So let me bring the first guest in here. We'll let her introduce herself to you guys. We got two other people I'm waiting to pull up, but let's go ahead and get you in there. Hey, Dion, how you doing today? I can't hear you. I think you're muted. Uh-oh. Hey, we're building the plane as we fly it. So, bear with us here. Technical difficulties. I still can't hear you. Log back off and then join again. All right. Yeah. Technical difficulty. So, we're building the plane as we fly. We'll get it right, hopefully. All right. So while we're waiting on Dion, we'll see what's going on in the chat. Let's see here. All right. So Timothy Rickner, elders, a businessman who we need, and we need people who know how to make payrolls to start running our cities. I would agree with that. I definitely would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that. All righty. We got Celeste Duffy in the building. Okay. Hey, Celeste, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Uh-oh, you brought the echo in here with you.
All right. Is that me?
Yeah. Do you have the stream on in the background or something?
Uh-uh.
Uh-oh. Let's take you out.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, great. I had to go in settings and play around with my audio.
All good. All good. Like I said, we're building the plane as we fly it.
Definitely that.
All right.
I filmed the whole video last night, and then when I came out and I was getting ready to start editing and all that, I was like, there's no sound. So it's been stuck in that mode since last night.
Perfect. All right. Celeste.
Okay.
All right.
Is there
I still got the, we still got the echo.
You have it too.
Yeah, I do. I don't know what happened. Do one of y'all have the have YouTube on in the background?
I do. I have my volume off, but here I'm gonna come out of it altogether. Boom. I'm out.
That might be it.
Okay, I'm out of it completely.
Okay.
Hopefully that's better.
Man, I'm still echoing.
Are you?
Am I?
I never have heard an echo from you.
Yeah, I don't think I'm echoing too.
Okay. Both of y'all come out and then come back in.
Okay, will do.
All righty. Now, I'm guessing you guys can hear me just fine now, right? Yeah, that's weird. I don't know what's up with that. But hopefully we'll get this right. Okay.
Hello? Yeah, that's good.
That's a lot better. All right, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Now, hopefully, when Dion gets in here, hopefully that will work, and then we can be off to the races. All right, Dion, is that better?
Okay. Hopefully it's better.
Okay. Are you, what kind of microphone are you using?
Me, just the one that's built into my MacBook Pro.
That's what it is. Do you have headphones?
Yeah, I do.
That might be it. It's the playback.
Oh, okay. I'm going to go real quick into my settings and just double check one other thing as well. Okay.
But in the midst of all of that, while she's doing that, We'll pull her out real fast. All right, so we have Celeste Duffy in the building with us. Celeste Duffy, how you doing today? Welcome back. She's a friend of the show. It's been a little bit. She's been on a hiatus, but she's a friend of the channel, man. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm glad to be back. Wise, it's good to see you. Looks like your setup is a little different than the last time I was here, and you look like you're upgrading a little bit. So
a little bit.
Go ahead. 2025 is looking good on you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, trying to just trying to, continue to, get better, 1% better on a day-to-day basis. That's the goal. But you guys can check out Celeste Duffy, Celeste_Duffy. That's her channel on YouTube currently. Are you starting to get back active?
I really am. I am I'm turning over a new leaf in 2025. I had to take some time out to deal with some family stuff, but that is done, and now I'm back to focusing on growing my channel and kind of wanting to develop an audience and talk about the things that are on my mind.
Awesome. All right, let's see if Dion is good to go. All right, are you ready? No? Okay. All righty. We are going to, as you saw, we're going to talk about Jemele Hill. We're going to talk about Karen Bass. I pretty much almost did half the stream on Karen Bass, kind of bringing it into Brandon Johnson and the foolery going on out there in Chicago. But I want to share this clip with you guys, and then I actually have two clips to share with you guys. Technically three, one from Jemele Hill, and then I want to get your take, on this situation. You can go anywhere you want to go with this. I know that these folks have, they've heard me, for the past hour, but I'd like to hear from you guys. So it's always good to get people on, man, because I'm like, man, I hear myself talk every day. All right, Dion, you ready?
Yep, ready to go.
All right. That was it right there.
That was it?
All right, perfect.
Oh, okay.
That was it. So it was the playback. All right, so let me pull this up for you guys, and then we'll get this thing rocking.
All right. This country's a goddamn joke. So Karen Bass got to go. The mayor of one city, not even of all of California, got to go because of the lies that y'all telling about how she's managed these fires. First of all, the fact that y'all are believing these lies without even taking the time to verify that they are lies tells me a lot about y'all, and it tells me a lot about why the country is exactly where it is. Makes a lot of sense. But the fact that y'all are saying that the mayor of a city has to go at the same fucking time that y'all just gave power back to a dude who mismanaged a pandemic so badly that 1 million people ain't here no more says a lot. The dude who took the pandemic response playbook left to him by Obama and threw it out because he didn't like Obama. And him throwing out that playbook made the pandemic worse, which again cost 1 million people their lives. Y'all gave him the job back? The dude who fired the pandemic response team because he said, and I quote, "I don't like having a bunch of people around when we don't need them." Y'all gave him the fucking job back. But Karen Bass got to go. The dude who was caught on audio tape, I'm going to say it again, he's caught on audio tape lying about how bad the pandemic is going to be. Y'all gave him the job back, but Karen Bass got to go. The dude, there's not enough ways for me to say, fuck y'all. It's not enough ways and not enough time.
All right, guys. So we got to continue our coverage of.
All right, that's my guy, Greg. Shout out to him, man. I want to get your thought. Actually, before we do that, I got to share one more with you, and then I'll let you guys, speak your mind on this real quick. And shout out to Greg, man. He's dope.
I understand part of this is natural human reaction. This is a catastrophe in Los Angeles like no one has seen before. And automatically people want to find somebody to blame. It is what it is. But what I would encourage everybody who's watching this program right now to do, Google Khloe Kardashian and the Kardashians and water usage. You'll find some very interesting information because their family alone, the amount of water they use is so excessive that it was a news story, a big news story here in Los Angeles. So I find that her comments to call out Mayor Bass, and especially in a moment where people are just trying to survive, and you are one of the most glamorous, privileged families in this city. And so for her to call Mayor Bass a joke, it's just not the time for that. Listen, we don't know the source of these fires. It's so much information that we don't have, so much misinformation that has been allowed to really pollute this issue online. You know, between the back and forth between the fire department. Look, the fire chief herself said that even with however you want to frame these cuts, because the fire department did receive a raise, all right? I want everybody to understand that. There was 17 million cut from the budget. Then there was another 50 million that they received in raises and salary because they were in the process of negotiation when this city budget happened. Right. The police or the fire chief herself said, okay, on television that 17 million had nothing to do with why they were unable to fight these fires. The truth is sometimes very unsexy, right, and that's what people don't like.
All right, one more. Actually, never mind. All right, we'll let you cook first, Celeste.
I can just say I'm exhausted by Jamel Hill. So let me start with the gentleman. Let me start with the gentleman first. I'm always very curious and somewhat suspicious of people who talk about things like the lies, but they don't articulate what the lie is. Mm-hmm. So it is impossible to refute what he's saying. So he remains always right, because in fact, he hasn't actually said anything. He's shown a great deal of emotion about a point that is not fully expressed. So that's number one. Maybe he's correct. I don't know. Maybe he's absolutely all cap. I don't know, because I don't know what these lies are that he's talking about. And the reason people, if I can, those folks, I don't live in California, but those people who do live in California, who have spoken online, I've seen a great many of them, as I'm sure everyone else has, are saying that Karen Bass has to go, is not because we don't know how the fire started. We don't need to know how the fire originated. It may very well be a pure act of nature. It may also very well be that had all things been in place, and if the situation had been ideal, that it would have in fact turned out exactly the same way. I'm not in position to say it would be any different. However, I can say this. I would feel better if in the end, even if it were exactly the same, if the same number of homes burned, if there was the same level of destruction and devastation, if they said, and we had not more than 100 vehicles that were out of service because they needed maintenance, and they had water in the reservoir, and they had not diverted water from Canada away from Los Angeles into a freshwater area that then would eventually go into the Pacific Ocean to protect the Delta smelt. And they had not blown up, Gavin Newsom had not blown up several dams. And they had let the cows and the sheep graze as they were doing before the pandemic on the hillsides to eat back some of the brush. And they had, so if you told me, yes, I have done everything I can and Mother Nature failed us, I would sit with you shoulder to shoulder, 10 toes down, and be saying this is a devastation and a shame. The problem is we can't say that now. We cannot say that, because there were too many opportunities for something that may have been able to mitigate this situation. And what did they do when they were notified 3 and 4 days before that they were facing historic winds and the conditions were such that it could be an apocalyptic, a nearly apocalyptic event? My understanding and her behavior expressed that what she said is, yes, that's fine, but I have to catch a flight.
Dion, get in there. What are your thoughts?
Well, I hate these headphones so much. I definitely, you could probably see I'm sitting here just nodding because I was thinking the exact same thing. The very fact that all the things that needed to be done to put them in a position where perhaps they would be in a better position. Um, all the things that you named, they were making decisions in the opposite direction, and so that makes them look like they just managed things extremely poorly. Um, the fact that there was I was listening to a video where the captain, the LA Fire Department captain, I think, what was his name? I'm gonna grab his name in a second because I wrote it down. Um, Freddie Escobar is his name. He had said, like, the day before the fire started, there was a they had a fire commission meeting, and at that meeting, he spoke and several other people, and they were saying, look, something's got to be done. Y'all have slashed this budget. We are already operating at a deficit, unable to just handle just regular fire situations. We don't have enough people to help the people that we serve. And if on top of that, there is a wildfire that kicks off, there's going to be loss of life, is what he said, point blank. And there were other people that spoke at that meeting as well. And so that is what makes them look so incompetent, is because they were making like all the wrong decisions.
Absolutely. Or no decisions at all, to be honest with you.
Yes.
I think that's more of it. And my thing is this. When you get into a position like mayor, governor, or any of these, political positions, you are there. You're going to be judged based on the decisions you make or don't make. So if you don't want people to talk about you, if you don't want people to judge your job performance, don't go into those roles. Don't ask to be mayor. Don't ask to be governor. Don't ask to be vice president or president, because people are going to question every decision that you make. That's like saying, I want to be a NFL head coach, and when we lose, I don't want to talk to the media. I'm not answering any of y'all questions. I'm not talking to you about any decision I did or did not make. That's part of the job.
Yep.
That comes with it. And why is it that they think that because this lady is a black woman, that she is above reproach, that she is above the same type of criticism that anybody else would get if they're in that role? That's part of the job. Mm-hmm. Either one of y'all can get in there. Go, Celeste.
So I I think that the and it's extremely sad. I think that the racial component is tragic here. And I mean that in the sense that it's dangerous, because what that racial component does, and the inability to say that if a black person does something wrong, first of all, black people are just people. I'm a black person. I love black people. I like myself. This is not about anything other than saying, but in the end, we're just people, which means we can make mistakes the same way any other person can make a mistake. We can be excellent at something, and we can also be terribly bad at something, the same way any other person can be that way. So exempting black people from, yes, we can celebrate all of the goods, but everything, all of the bads must always be hushed, can never be spoken above a whisper, can only be talked about in a circle of three where everybody's closed in, heads down, and the word can't get out. What it does is it allows people who may, in another circumstance, be more on their toes and be more interested in, let me do a good job because I don't want to face the criticism that anybody else would face doing a poor job. They don't have to do that. And what it does is allows people to be derelict in their duty. To be a mayor of a city is to be a position of stewardship. It allows them to be derelict in their duty, and they get to careen in that dereliction over and over and day after day until the one day, unfortunately, something like this happens that puts their incompetence on full display. And the truth is, the people who are responsible for that incompetence are, one, the individual herself, Karen Bass, and two, the people who voted for her and abdicated their responsibility, which was to hold her accountable for that stewardship along the process. Is very much like not arresting people who commit petty crimes. Well, if you let them go, the crimes they commit get bigger and bigger, the infractions get worse and worse, and the level of violence and danger attached to those crimes becomes more and more horrific. The same thing happens with this kind of incompetence. When you let people go, you let them skate, you let them ride because you're so invested, not in their actual success, but in them looking successful. And the reason you're invested in that is because you think somehow their success, because you share their skin or you share their gender or you share some other immutable characteristic, somehow their success makes you feel like you're more successful. And you are moving people into dangerous and perilous situations, trying to gain a self-esteem from someone else that, to be frank, your parents should have given you.
I would agree with that. The other thing too is that when you found out that the insurance companies they didn't renew. They didn't cancel people's policies. They just didn't renew the folks out there. They did not renew their fire protection insurance. When that was found out, one, I want to know why the people in California, especially in those areas where their insurance were pulled, why were they not up in arms? Two, why didn't anybody in leadership, mayor, governor, why didn't they step in and do something about it? And three, how is it that they knew about it and y'all didn't know that this is a real risk? Because what we do know about these insurance companies, they're not in the business of losing money. They're not in the business of that. And they have those actuaries, and I'm sure that they were running all types of, statistical diagrams and formulas. And they probably came up with, hey, there is a high percentage that something catastrophic is going to happen. And they were calculating the incompetence of Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass into that equation. And they made a decision like, this is a bad bet for us. So we're gonna get out. So if they knew that, if the insurance companies knew this, how in your infinite wisdom you don't come to some form of idea that, hey, maybe we should get together and figure out what they know and how can we stop this before it gets too crazy? I don't understand that. Dion, you want to get in there?
I think I heard I heard Greg Foreman. It's just like what he said is that, when wokeism is involved and that whole mindset and all the DEI and all of that, I mean, these people just govern poorly. And, people probably want to criticize the insurance companies, but I was thinking in my mind the same thing that you just said. I mean, these people have made a business decision and they're researching what's going on behind the scenes. And a lot of these deficits, they were a matter of public record. You can chase this down and see the paperwork. Kristen Crowley, the LA Fire Department chief, said that for they say she's a DEI hire, but she was covering her butt from what I can see. Because
they're all pointing the finger at each other. Nobody wants to take blame.
Right.
But you're right.
But
Go
she
ahead.
said
I'm sorry.
for the last 3 years that she has been on that job, she has been sending letters requesting help, and all her communications, it just fell on deaf ears. So I'm like, in that sense, she was covering her tail to a degree. And so if that information is, if she's sending letters, and then you have all these documents that you can track down, because like I said, these things are a matter of public record. The fact, the budget and the decisions made about that, and all the other things, the fact that I think I read that there hasn't been a new water reservoir built in the state of California since 1973. And when you think of the population 2025 compared to 1973, along with the illegal, I mean, that deficit is just huge. And so it's no wonder the insurance companies pulled out, because they're like, we don't want to be left holding the bag on this. So we're out. And so I mean, it just comes down from the whole, the wokeism and the progressivism and all of that, and it's just so unfortunate.
You know what's crazy about that you mentioned that, and they bring the whole race thing in reference to Karen Bass, but Gavin Newsom, he's getting a business too.
Yes.
They're asking for his resignation as well. Right. Because of his incompetence. So it's not just Karen Bass. I mean, they're focusing on Karen Bass.
Right.
Because, she's the quote unquote black woman, although it's not a whole lot black about her if you've seen her family, and I don't want to dive into that right now. But that's probably a conversation for another day. But Gavin Newsom's, he's getting it as well. They're coming after his behind as well. And the thing is that the regulations, even if they wanted to build a new reservoir, it'd probably take them 20 years to build it because of the regulations. Exactly. You can't get anything accomplished in California in a short amount of time. So, I mean, it's just a mess all the way through. And they did not take the advice from not just, people, there in California, but they were also given, some information and some advice on what to do from the federal government as well. What do you guys think about tying the federal dollars to the resignation of Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass and anybody else involved in this debacle?
Because we know they're. Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, go ahead. We know.
Go ahead,
I was
Dion.
just going to say,
sorry.
because we know that there is no way they're going to get a bunch of monies to fix that issue without any kind of, I guess, responsibility tied to it. Because if a large number of people are feeling that you're mismanaging huge amounts of money, and then now you want the help of the government to bail you out, well, you can't just freely have that money because you may mismanage it again. You can go ahead, Celeste.
So, all right, I'm gonna take two tacks on this. The first being, I feel that the federal government should not make federal aid contingent on Gavin Newsom or even Karen Bass resigning, because I feel like that is a disruption in the constitutional order and in the sovereignty of the states. And you can't have it work like my state is not going to mandate me in terms of COVID, and we celebrate that. But then on the other hand, we want to dictate who can, the people themselves are going to have to actually fulfill their responsibility as citizens and say, we want better leadership. Now, I don't think the federal government has to give them any money, because you have to ask yourself, why should the people in Texas and who manage their state well, or why should the people in Florida who manage their natural disasters well, why should they have to ante up for the mismanagement in California? So I'm not necessarily saying the government has to give money. That is something we do because we are Americans and we help other Americans when they're in difficulty. I am very much in favor of making the money contingent, just not contingent upon nullifying the vote of the people. If the people want Gavin Newsom, they should have him, and they should have the consequences of him. What they want is to be able to have this failed and feckless leadership, but they don't want to suffer the consequences that failed and feckless leadership brings. So I'm saying the people themselves should have to choose. You're going to have to grow up now. It's time to grow up. You cannot, I mean, at the end of the day, hey, look, the word being careful is defined as being full of care. To be careless is the absence of care. These people are careless, and their carelessness may very well have devastated the city of LA. And we are sure going to find that out. We may not know that today, but in the weeks to come, we will absolutely find out if that is true. And if that is true, the people of Los Angeles have got to make a decision. And then the people of the United States have also got to make a decision and say, contingent upon what is our support? Because you don't just get to go out without a license. If you're my child and don't have a license, and I say, you can't drive the car because you don't have a license. And when I'm not looking, you take the keys and go drive the car and run it into a tree and then say, can you fix the car? You have to suffer some consequence because of your behavior. If you insist upon having behavior that is likely or can possibly cause this kind of damage, you don't just get to always call in other people to come fix the mess and then go back on so you can lay on the beach. There has to be some contingencies upon, first of all, and if they ask me, which nobody has, but if they ask me, number one is you got to fill the reservoir. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I don't care what
Absolutely.
you say about a fire. And I don't know a thing about fighting fires, but I do know you need some water.
Absolutely.
So
but the thing is, Celeste,
to me that you're going to correct this water situation.
The reservoir that is empty, that's close to the Palisades, it just needed a repair, but it had been a year. Priorities obviously are off there. Careless. Obviously,
careless.
That's pretty obvious. That is careless. That's being careless, which is also absolutely, which is also the reason I would assume that the insurance companies got out of there, because if you know anything about insurance, they'll tell you that we're not going to cover you if you do things that put yourself in harm's way. Right. If you do things that I can't remember exactly. There is some wording in all your insurance paperwork that tells you basically we're not covering you if you put yourself in a situation that you could have prevented yourself. Right. And I would assume that that's why they got out of there and why they didn't renew. But when you have the mayor funneling money to things like queer occult interests, ebony theaters, trans cafes, but you don't put money in the fire department, you cut $17 million, almost $18 million from the fire department.
You don't patch up the reservoir.
You don't patch up the reservoir. It takes you a year to do that. You ignore the actual scientists. Now, y'all all about climate change, but you actually ignore them that are telling you that a disaster is imminent. On the Joe Rogan podcast, it said that there was a scientist that had mentioned this like 2 years ago, that if the right kind of winds with the fire, it could be catastrophic.
Wow.
How are you the mayor and not listening to this? The other thing, when it comes to the fire department and the fire chief, she said she didn't know anything about the hydrants and how the water gets in the hydrant. She didn't know anything about that. Isn't that your job? Maybe it's not your job to fill it, but you should know how they function, right? You're the chief. You're the fire chief. You don't know how the thing that you use to fight the fires, you don't know how it works? Like, it's just incompetence across the board that I have a problem with. And you put these people in positions of power, not because they were qualified, but because they check a box. First thing out this lady's mouth is, I'm the first queer woman fire. Nobody cares.
No.
Can you do the job? That's all that matters to me. And I'm sure when somebody's house is on fire and they're in danger, they're not going to care what your pronouns are either. Can you come and save me? That's all that matters. And it's just, everybody's pointing the finger. Nobody wants to take accountability. And I think that's one of the bigger problems here. Because people, like you said, black people, white people, we're just people in the grand scheme of things. We're Americans in the grand scheme of things. But why hasn't Gavin Newsom, Karen Bass, what's her name, Kristen Crawley, the fire department chief, nobody has come out and said, you know what, we messed up and we could have done X, Y, and Z better. Why hasn't that happened yet? Because the American people, the last time I checked, we're pretty forgiving people if you just come out and admit that, hey, I messed up. We could have done this, and this a little better.
That's why when I saw the video of Karen Bass when she was arriving back into the country, and how she turned instantly into a person that's deaf and mute. I mean, I was outdone. I mean, you don't have a word of encouragement or something. Because the reporter was just asking me, is there anything that you have to say to, you can't say, my heart goes out to you all, I'm on my way back. I mean, just nothing. See, that's why that whole progressive liberalism and that whole wokeism and all of that, they don't believe in taking accountability. They're just power grabbers. They want the power, but they don't want to be accountable. They don't want anyone to hold them accountable for what they're doing, and that's ridiculous. And as someone else said, I don't know if you're familiar at all with Brandon Lehman. Yeah. But you are, okay. Yeah, he said that it just left me. Yeah, it just left me. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
No worries. It happens.
It's so much, because while we're all processing this whole thing, and then you have people telling you, well, no, don't criticize us. And Bass was one of them. She said, whenever she's asked a question, her statement is, I'm just worried about trying to put the fires out right now. I'm not answering anything else. No, people have the right to ask you questions in real time, especially the people that were affected.
Well, especially when, folks' houses have burnt down.
Yes.
Well, I'm even okay with that. I'm even okay with saying it's too soon. Right now we have to put out the fires, and that I really am okay with that. So the response to that question is absolutely. What date can we start the criticism? Just tell me what. If you say we need to
never have a date,
I will wait 2 weeks. But let me tell you, try as they may to escape accountability, it is not going to work, because the people of LA, I believe, are in shock and they're in dismay, but they don't know what they're in for, because when they get ready and they're allowed back into their homes and they're at the point where they're trying to figure out how to pick up the pieces, many of these people are not going to be able to rebuild. They are not going to be able to afford to rebuild. They're not.
Oh, absolutely not.
They
when
think that they're going to go home and there's going to be some parachute that's going to come and they're going to rebuild. No, there are billionaires now sitting around assembling parcels while nobody's looking, getting
without
ready
a doubt.
to take all that waterfront facing land.
Absolutely.
Because millionaires are not going to be, and a lot of these people, they may have had their grandparents or their parents own the home at the time. They may have gotten it for $750,000 or $1.5 million. Now it's worth $7 million. What it takes to build that home back today, that home that your parents may have purchased for $1 million, you inherited it. Now it's worth $7 million. To build that same thing back, they're not going to be able to build this stuff back. They're not. California just erased a significant number of their population that probably is going to have to go somewhere else, maybe somewhere else in California, or maybe somewhere else in the country. And when they find out, this is when they're going to find out how feckless their government is. When they just try to get enough information to find out if they can build back, the hurdles that they're going to have to jump through is
Right.
what's going to send them packing. This is so there will be some accountability. The accountability is going to be in the feet, because people are going to vote with their feet, because they're going to have no other choice. They're going to have to walk away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why Brandon Lehman, I just remembered what he said, but he says a situation like this, I mean, they're going to mess around and potentially turn California red, because there's nothing like experiencing these kind of results, unfortunately, that will red pill a progressive liberal, is what he said. And it's so true. Maybe. Oh my
I mean, you see the people out in Chicago. I mean, they went from Lori Lightfoot to Brandon Johnson.
Right.
They still haven't learned their lesson yet. Now, we know that out in Chicago, they got a movement, Flip Chicago Red. There is a movement. We haven't heard anything of the such out in California yet. I don't know if you guys seen the clip, but a guy called in the Larry Elder show and who voted for Kamala, who didn't even know what Larry Elder's platform was, but was trying to clown him because he didn't win. And this was recent. This is recent. So I don't know if there's any saving a lot of those people in the cities. Now, out in California, from what I've heard, I don't know how accurate it is, but the people outside the cities, there's actually a lot of folks out there that do vote red out there, you know, on the outskirts. But they're outnumbered by the people who live in the cities. Obviously, those dense city markets, they have a ton of people that live in there. Yeah. Is this situation enough to get maybe 30-40% of those people to flip?
Well, I heard that the Palisades was like 82% blue. So I wonder how they're going to change, or if.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. My thing is, my other question to you guys, with you guys being Black women, this conversation around Karen Bass being a Black woman, don't criticize her because it's not her. How do you think this affects other women, one, other Black women, two, that want to toss their hat in this political arena when when the people find out that even if they make a mistake, we can't criticize them without being called racist or misogynist?
I think it makes us look ridiculous. Unfortunately, I mean, it just puts a negative cast on Black women to the point where I would think there are some voters, you know, I don't know percentages and all of that, but there are some voters that will probably feel put off by statements like that. I don't know where in the world. The first time I heard that was like 2 days ago, and I'm like, what in the world do you mean don't question a Black woman's leadership? I'm like, at my job, I'm questioned. I mean, who are they? You know, even right here in my city, I'm in St. Louis, and right now our mayor, a Black female, is coming under fire because of spending too much time away from her post, basically, traveling.
64 vacations. Is that right?
Yes, that's her.
I haven't covered it yet. There's been so much going on. I haven't got into that yet, but yeah, I'm on top of that. 64 vacations while in office. I mean, it sounds like the Democrats for you, though. I mean, Joe Biden, 40% of his administration was on vacation. So that seems like she's just following suit from the top.
Right. And the Dalton County, you know, all of that. It points out a pattern, unfortunately. But I mean, the reason it's a pattern is because of progressivism.
What are your thoughts, Celeste? Before you answer that, Dion, you mentioned something. It seems like it's a pattern, and it is. Celeste and I, we talked about Tiffany Henry, I don't know how many times early in the year, and that debacle. And then, you know, obviously you got this situation, and you got, what's her name? Is it Corey Brooks? That was the representative out of, out of St. Louis area?
Oh,
what's her name? Is it Corey Brooks? Is that right?
Last name is not ringing a bell, but Corey, I know who you're talking about.
Definitely. I know it's Corey Bush. That's who it is.
That's it.
That's who it is. Her situation, You know, obviously the St. Louis mayor, her situation that just popped up now, the debacle that happened down in New Orleans.
Yes.
I mean, it just seems it's one thing after another. Fannie Willis, you know, in Atlanta.
Yes.
I mean, it's one thing after another.
It's embarrassing.
At what,
It's like it's making us
at what
look
point,
bad.
you know, are the people going to say, you know what, this experiment is failed?
Yeah. That's a good question. At what point?
So I think that it's not an embarrassment. It may be a pattern. I find it very difficult to take on any shame for behavior that isn't mine. So I never feel any.
That's good. I wish I was to that point.
Yeah, I never feel any epistemic access. And to be honest, the same way with success. If someone is doing something that's wonderfully successful, I will like, wow, that's great. Imagine how much work and preparation it took to do that. And I can, you know, celebrate that. But I have no epistemic access to anyone else's success or to their failure. So I think more Black people should embody that. I think we'd be healthier and we could demand better from our leaders. The pattern, I think, unfortunately, because we're under, you know, this kind of racial spell or something, the pattern for me, from what I can see, is not in Blackness. The pattern is in liberalism.
That's it.
It is the liberalism that is the failure. And the Black face of liberalism is what we are being dazzled by, which is unfortunate. Because what it actually does, and this is very sinister, is it allows Black people, you know, Wise and I, when we talked about Tiffany Henyard, you know, one of the things I thought about Tiffany Henyard, I said, though, they like her. They like these incompetent people because they can be used. And then they have a Black face which shields them for criticism. So if you're getting really to run game on the public, put a Black face in front of it. And that way you can be in the background doing whatever dirt you want to do. And as soon as the spotlight shines, the Black face is there to rebuff all the rebuke, because nothing can be said. Because all the Black people, oh, no, you saying that because they're Black people are going to have to, again, have to understand that the division in the country is not racial. No. It is not Black and white. It is ideological. So Black and white liberals will view this fire, they will react to this fire, and they will, at least if they're in LA, suffer the same consequences of this fire together. It's not going to be that much different for either of them. Black and white liberals are going to suffer that together. So the difference is not in their race. The difference is in their ideology. And what their ideology does not cause them to demand from their leaders a certain level of competency. Whereas if you get what they call the conservative or whatever you want to call it, other ideology, those people, they elect people Black and white. Very few Black women so far, hopefully more in the future. But you look at someone like Winston Sears, we don't see her on TV acting a fool. When they put a camera in her face, she's not standing there at the airport. She's just a stoic with nothing to say. She is not doing any of that kind of foolery. And the reason I think that the people are so afraid and they won't, Wise, to your point, come out and say and take some responsibility, look, I messed up, is because they know when you are unqualified and you are poorly suited for a high-paying position, what you are aware of every day is that, God forbid, people find out how poorly qualified I am and how incapable I am, because there is no place else I could go with my current skill set and garner anywhere near this paycheck. And it makes them a slave to it because you don't, people who have skills, if I'm an electrician and I get fired from the electrical company, I can still wire a house somewhere. I have a skill I can take with me. And it may take me a little bit of time or whatever, but it wouldn't, eventually, and with a little bit of time and some focus and some sacrifice, in a year or two, I'll be exactly where I left off. I'm not walking around afraid because I know people need lights. And as long as they do, if I'm a plumber, if I'm a dentist, look, nobody can suffer a toothache. If something happens, I know I can go someplace else and be a dentist. When you have an actual skill that can be paid for in the marketplace, the problem with government is it operates outside of the free market. So there is never a realistic price set on your skill set. So you can take people with very low skills and who make very high wage because they operate in an artificial system that isn't regulated by true commercial market price setting. So those people know that, and they know they can't go be forced out of government, out of that artificial bubble. And if they have to walk onto the marketplace and say, here I am, and this is what I have to offer, they may be baristas.
And you're absolutely right with what you said earlier. And you and I, we talked about this, I don't know, almost a year ago at this point now,
Wow.
About it not being about race, about it being about ideology. And someone who is a liberal, regardless of what color they are or race that they are, they're more alike than myself, who doesn't believe in liberalism, don't believe in this woke radical ideology. We're on polar ends of the spectrum in our thought process and our beliefs. So you're absolutely right. Although these people always want to, for whatever reason, I'm not going to say for whatever reason because we know why, but they want to bring it to race. But it's not about what you look like, how much melanin you had. It really is about ideology, and you can see that from city to city based on how it's ran and who's running it. You can see it. Look at Baltimore in comparison to, a city that's not ran by a place that had 12 people, run on the Democrat side and nobody opposing them on the other side. And if you can win the primary, it's a done deal for you. Now think about the cities that are like that. There's a handful of them, actually more than a handful of them. Baltimore, I'm assuming St. Louis is like that. Chicago's like that. They had 12 Democrats run there. Nobody, not an independent in sight, not a Republican, not somebody from the Green Party. So it's the same type of ideology, the same rhetoric. That's what has these people in the situation and position that they're in. But they're trying to make it a race thing. And it's unfortunate because there's a lot of people that are still falling for this, unfortunately. And a lot of it just has to do with ignorance because they just don't know any better. But they're using it and they're weaponizing it. And they're actually using black faces against their own people because, like you said, they know that they can, for the most part, be above reproach. If you say anything about them, they can hit you with the scarlet letter or the scarlet word racist. And all of a sudden you got to back down because it's like, I don't want to be labeled that. And it's just unfortunate. But hopefully more and more people will wake up to the fact that it's not about this race thing. We've been talking about this now for almost a year. It's not about that. Hopefully people will start to wake up to it and realize, one, that we're just all Americans. We live in this country. We're all Americans. And now it's about your ideology and what you think is right. And the sooner more people get there, the better we'll be.
It's dangerous. It's dangerous. This level of incompetence is dangerous. It can kill you. There are people who died in
Absolutely.
LA. Absolutely. Can kill you. You know what I mean? You can't, gone are the days, unfortunately, and this is, one of the plagues of wealth. Wealthy societies all throughout history have had this problem. Wealth brings complacency. And we all want the benefits of the citizenry, but we want to be lazy and complacent about the duty. And the fact of the matter is there are duties. you as the citizen have a duty. And in fact, you have the most important duty because you are in fact the government. It says we the people.
Right.
We are the government. We are the leaders. These
Yeah.
people are only supposed to be administrators of our will.
Exactly.
They're not supposed to be governing us in the nanny state way.
Well, but that's what the Democrats want. That's their preference.
Well, and you can have that, but what you can't have is that and us fix things when your lazy nanny messes it up. Okay, I'm okay with people suffering the consequences of their choices, and I'll respect your choice, whether I agree with it or not. I will respect your choice. What I'm not okay with is saying, I'm going to make a choice, and whenever it goes wrong, however it goes wrong, you pay for it. That I will not do. And to be honest, we need to be very careful because the rest of the country is getting a little bit tired of it.
Yes.
They're getting a little bit tired of having to use their resources fixing other people's problems. And
you're absolutely right.
And not mistakes that happen because they happen, because those things happen to all of us. And I would hope that all of us would stand with our fellow American and do that. But the mistakes that are avoidable, those are the ones that I think people are getting a little bit tired of.
You're absolutely right. We're going to go ahead and wrap the show. We're almost at the 2-hour mark, but Dion, you got any last words for us?
Let's see. Well, I was thinking that's what's so amazing about people like yourself, Wise, and many others who are getting the message out so that people can see the other side, because so many of us, and like Celeste, you used the word bedazzled, and that just really resonated because it's almost like that. It's like a hypnotic spell of some kind. It's so strange. But I am just so glad to see so many voices out there that are being elevated so that people can see another side and then be able to make a decision about who they choose to follow, choose to lead them, I'll say. So keep on doing what you're doing. I've been watching your channel. I remember, like I said, you were at like 37,000. Every time I look around, I'm looking at my phone. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I'm excited about that. And just keep going. Definitely. Because it is helping people. It's helping
I appreciate
people.
that. It's a blessing, man. It really is. It really is. Celeste, any last words?
Yeah, well, and you bless us too, for letting us come onto your show.
Yes.
And even as you grow, you continue to try and take people along with you and share your expertise on, on air, but even off air. What people don't know, always give a call of encouragement, always checking on you. So what you have, you deserve. Those are seeds that you planted, and they're growing for you, and they should absolutely be growing for you. So, that's your shine, and you really do deserve it. My last words is I definitely feel I watched like everybody else, and I feel horrible about what happened to the people in California. I really do. There's a guy on the internet, I can't remember his name right now, but he has a video out, and he drives through Beverly Hills, the Palisades, Sunset Boulevard, the Hollywood Hills, and video. It was taken 3 months before the fires, and it's no sound, no anything. It's just a camera on his dashboard, and he's just driving the neighborhoods in the air. That is beautiful. I mean, that is. We can say what you want about California's gorgeous. The topography. It is a beautiful, beautiful place to live. I can see why people who live there are like, I'm an LA person. Californians and New Yorkers, those are people who they rep their place.
Yes, they do.
New Yorkers are like, nah, I'm a New Yorker. You can tell them that there are diamonds on the ground somewhere else, and they'll be like, yeah, but I'm a New Yorker. the same way with California. People have the same kind of love and allegiance. And when you see California, you can really see why people feel that way. It's absolutely beautiful. And to see it now, and unfortunately, you know, what's crazy is on his video, he has like all the neighborhood names that he's driving through, and in parentheses it says rest in peace for those neighborhoods that have now been, you know, devastated and are gone. And it is an absolute shame that California, well, LA is in the situation that it is in now, and what those fires have done, and the people who are devastated. I'm very compassionate about that, and I feel extremely bad about that. And I feel like we have not heard from LA yet. LA has not really been back to their homes. They have not really had a chance to assess what happened to them. They haven't.
You're right.
But I believe that there is going to be a groundswell of anger when they get a real sense of what actually happened to them. And I feel like you got to be there. We have to be there to hold them, because that's going to be dramatic.
It is. You're absolutely right. All right, ladies. Well, I appreciate you guys pulling up today. Hopefully, this is the first time this year, but hopefully it won't be the last time this year. You know, Celeste back in business. Celeste, you can find Celeste at Celeste_Duffy. She also has a book. Give them the book and let them know where they can find that at.
Okay, the book is called The Ass Backwards Way to Move Forward, and you can find it on Amazon. That's The Ass Backwards Way to Move Forward.
Go check out the book. I can honestly say I read it. It's enjoyable. I enjoyed it a lot. I've learned a lot. I actually had my wife get a hold of it as well. It's a really, really good read. It's definitely worth checking out. Go check that out. You can find Dion. She's at, is it D Maria Reacts? Is that how you pronounce that?
That's correct.
All right. D Maria Reacts. Go check her out. She's new in these YouTube streets, but she's doing some work over there, man. So the channel is starting to pick up some steam, man. So keep doing your thing.
Will do.
All right, ladies. I will catch up with y'all next time. Appreciate you guys pulling up.
Okay.
All right, man. I appreciate you guys. Appreciate you guys hanging in there with me today. Man, 2-hour stream, man. A little over 2 hours. You guys rocked with me this entire time, man. And I talked for an hour. So appreciate you guys pulling up, man. Again, as always, keep God first in your life. Stay prayed up. And I will catch up with you all next week. This is the last show for the week. We'll catch up with you all next week, man. Enjoy the weekend. Stay warm. We're going to watch a little bit of football. Go Ravens. We'll catch up with y'all next week. Peace.
Vibes so